Are you applying to college to start in fall of 2023 and wondering how to play the test optional game to the maximum? If so, in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through data that we have from the first ever test optional cycle at colleges and universities in the United States. I'm going to use that to create a nuanced story for what schools are going to be best bets for you if you don't want to submit a test score, and what schools are going to really value a test score in this test optional environment. My name's Brooke. I've been coaching the SAT and the ACT and doing college consulting, in particular essay coaching and building out your story, but I love data too, so that's another one of my hobbies. Since, I don't know, 2 decades ago, some ridiculous amount of time. I work with students privately. We also have a team of tutors at SupertutorTV, so if you're looking for help in this process, I definitely recommend that you check out our website. We've also got a couple of video-based courses for the SAT and the ACT. And in particular, one thing that's coming up that I'm excited about is a new seminar called a Super Seminar, which is focused on students who are high performers on the SAT, but need a bump in the reading section. So if you are aiming for a 750 plus, maybe it's a 770, maybe it's a 790 on the SAT reading section, and you need 40 more points, 50 more points, 80 more points, whatever it is, definitely check out that super seminar. We're going to be hosting 2 of them this August 2022. You can find that at supertutortv.com/superseminar. Cool. Okay. I'm going to go through a lot of data here. All of this data is going to be in the blog that goes with this video, and you can find the link to that blog in the description below. And I really encourage you to go there, because as you start to sort through your college list, instead of just watching me talk about it, you can literally get into each school and sort of build out your strategy for where you're applying and why you might want to submit a score or not submit a score and all that good stuff. First thing that I'm going to get out of the way is the test blind schools and the test required schools, because obviously we know what to do if schools are test blind or test required, right? If it's test blind, you don't submit the score at all and it doesn't matter. And if it's test required, well, you have to submit it. Right now, among competitive colleges, Caltech is probably the most competitive college right now, which is ironic because MIT, probably Caltech's biggest competitor on the other coast, is requiring the SAT or the ACT. Cornell has certain schools that are fully test blind. So not all of Cornell is test blind, some of it is test optional, but the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, Architecture, Art, and Planning, the College of Business Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management, as well as their Nolan School of Hotel Administration, are all test blind right now. So if you applied within Cornell to those particular schools, you will not need a test score and they will not even look at it. University of California system is also indefinitely test blind. UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, UC Irvine, UC Santa Barbara, some of the most prestigious among those colleges, and there's a few others as well. A few small colleges that might be of note or are on the more competitive side: Pitzer, Reed College, Dickinson College. So just a handful of test blind right now. It's not really the zeitgeist of the moment. The zeitgeist of the moment really is test optional. We'll get into that in a second. But first I want to get to test required. So there are several competitive schools right now requiring the SAT or the ACT. At the top of the list is MIT. Then we've got Georgetown, Georgia Tech, University of Florida, and all public schools in Florida right now are requiring a test. Purdue, University of Georgia, and Gallaudet. If you apply to one of these colleges, you've got to have a test score. So before I get into my best bets, I want to make a few caveats. Caveat number 1 is all this data, by the way, is from students who were applying fall of 2020 for 2021 admissions. That means these students were heavily impacted by test cancellations, and a lot of them seriously couldn't get a hold of an SAT or an ACT if they wanted to. And so I will take all this with a grain of salt. While there are some colleges I'm going to name, and this is all relativity as well, I'm looking at how did colleges respond to this circumstance relative to how other colleges responded, and looking at that as an indicator, maybe ballpark, of where they might be a little bit more forgiving if you don't have a test score. There's so many confounding factors that we can't be 100% sure, and data in the future will be hindsight 2020, right? So we can't be 100% sure. This is all guesstimation and estimation, but hey, when you're trying to flip a coin at a certain point because you like 10 colleges, but you know you only want to fill out applications for 3 of them, this could potentially help you make some of those decisions. Second thing that I'm going to say is all the data that I have is based on percentages of students who enrolled at these colleges and universities. So this is the percent of students who enrolled who took the SAT or the ACT. It's not the percent of students who are accepted. Still, I think it's a good indicator in terms of who you are and what you have to work with and whether you're the kind of kid who will end up going to college here, right? The first list that I'm going to read off is top 20 national and some liberal arts colleges where I think you've got your best bet if you're looking to apply test optional. So if you want to go to an extremely competitive college and you already exhausted the test blind list and you want to apply to a few other schools and you're wondering where do I have a shot without a test score, these are probably some of your best bets. Number one on my list is UChicago. UChicago was test optional even before the pandemic hit at all. So there is no data from UChicago. They don't release a common data set, but I would still call it a best bet because they have been open to the idea of test optional since before the pandemic. So it is one strategy that it's already using. If you're in range at UChicago, though, I obviously would encourage you still to send your scores. Next on my list is Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt has really high test scores in terms of its 25th to 75th percentile. So if you have a high test score, in my experience, Vanderbilt loves students with high test scores. And those who submit a test score and it's high, right, will have a better chance of admission at Vanderbilt. So if you've got a great score, I recommend that you apply there. It can still really help you there. But this is a school in the South, and statistically, if I take the percent of students who submitted SAT scores, percent of students who submitted ACT scores who are in that class now, who are walking around on campus, it's particularly low compared to the competition. So it still might be on my list if you're looking to go test optional. Amherst is here, Cornell, and when I say Cornell, all of the colleges that aren't test blind, I would put in this category. Harvey Mudd, which is a California school, one of the Claremont colleges, Swarthmore, Emory, Williams, Carnegie Mellon. And I want to put one more piece of context in here as well. So Emory's on my list of like better bets for competitive colleges, but know that that doesn't mean that you don't have an advantage if you have a test score. For example, 17% of students who applied to Emory during this admission year were admitted versus only 8.6% of students who did not submit test scores. So even though Emory, compared to its peers, enrolled more people who did not have an SAT or ACT score, their admission rate was almost double for people who had a score. So this does not tell the whole story, guys, right? This is part of the story. These are comparatively potentially better bets, but not necessarily, an admonition to not take the SAT or the ACT. Within these statistics, you still are up against a harder mountain if you aren't submitting a test score at anywhere that is considering test scores, right? Because if they're considering it, well, that means if you have a good one, it's going to help you, right? So having a great test score is still beneficial, even at these schools that I say are best test optional bets. But I also want to give you guys information so you know if you're trying to apply to reach schools where your score doesn't quite reach, which are the ones where maybe you've got at least a shot at getting in, right? Because in the past, they've admitted people without test scores at a higher rate than the competition in the same bracket as them. So now I'm going to talk about what your worst bets are if you don't have a test score, or what might be a good bet if you've got a great test score, right? Schools that are really valuing the test score. So here are, of the top 20 schools, I'm first going to go through top 20 colleges here, and then we'll go down to top 50 in a minute. So Notre Dame tops my list. Princeton is next, Yale, then Harvard, then Stanford. And there's subtleties in here. Northwestern, Brown, Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania, and Rice, all still very competitive schools, and we're seeing the majority of students here are submitting their test scores. So if you want to have a great shot at these schools, chances are you probably should be getting a test score in if you can. A few wildcards in general. We don't have data on all the top schools. For example, Dartmouth and Duke, we don't have common data sets on for this test optional year. We expect to get data from them because they typically do fill out the common data set, but it's just not released yet. WashU, Johns Hopkins, and Columbia notoriously do not release common data sets, though Columbia has announced that it's going to, which is really exciting because of the whole scandal that happened over the winter. And you guys can watch that video later. NYU also did not have data, but in my experience, NYU loves a great test score. So if you can have a great test score, that can be really important, especially because NYU is one of the few schools that's hyper competitive here that de-emphasizes activities, letters of recommendation, and essays. So in other words, if you want to get into NYU, a test score is sometimes a great golden ticket to get in, and it might even weigh in more at NYU than some of these other factors, which is not the case at other schools. Let's talk about best bets with no score at top 50 schools. So I'm just going to go through some of these. I might not get through every top 50 school. If I don't mention it, either we couldn't find the data or they're kind of just in the middle. So my best bets without a score would be, at the top would be Southern Methodist University, Northeastern, Villanova, Boston University, Tulane, Tufts, Wake Forest, Wisconsin, and Pepperdine. I will say if you're applying to Tulane, you've got to apply early action or early decision. Over 90% of students last year who got into Tulane applied early in one way or one fashion or another. So if you're not applying early to Tulane, you really don't have a good shot of getting in. And then in terms of schools where I really recommend that you do submit the score and where the score really matters, sort of worst bets for people with no test score and good bets for people who have a test score. These tend to be well-regarded state schools: University of Michigan, Ohio State, UT Austin, UVA, College of William and Mary, University of Southern California, and University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. All of these schools are going to value your SAT or ACT more comparatively to those who are in the same sort of ranking bracket, okay? So I would expect those numbers to go up even more in the forthcoming sets of data that we're gonna see soon, post-vaccine, post all of that kind of stuff. So that's about all I've got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. And we've got lots more videos here to help you with your college admission strategy. I hope you join us. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Take care.